You guys have taken ours.
Hi, I'm Taylor. Nice to meet you. WCCO Radio. Great to meet you. I feel like we see each other all the time. Yeah. This is not a trip. Tons of familiar faces. Yes. I mean, both countries were got here early, but I know these things better start on time. Sometimes I have been back, but other times you don't. Yeah. There's like a city of glasses. Yeah.
Like they have fabric seats.
So nice.
I can hear him.
But yes, so because we are at at home, we have this display, but we didn't think that was enough. So every book on every book is a book that's on
Had they
They had read excerpts,
excerpts?
taking things out of context.
Yeah, they had actually read them.
Every student that spoke, which was at least 10, was in favor of the book, protecting those texts. Which I think speaks a lot to like, who is this actually important to?
There's also a principle in this too, is just that don't read it.
Right now.
For sure. This is true in many things in life. But you do you.
Yeah, not every book is good.
No, not for you. No, and I said, there can be ones that they don't, you know, but they might be for somebody. Yeah, that's
And we might as well have.
I would never take it off the shelf.
yeah, no.
Over in here.
So that's the standing on the side of the things like and see if they get complete truthful.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. The manga stuff, my son, they love it. Huge. Oh my God. Huge armament. And then the anime and again, it's like some of the things that they love it where they should be at.
Yes.
So,
And most importantly, student interest. We also strive to maintain a focus on diversity and inclusion for all students. Our library collection features titles that incorporate race, sex, marital status, national origin, age, ancestry, sexual orientation, whoops, said that already, familial status, and disability. The goal is that our students feel seen, included, and accurately reflected in the stories we offer, to provide safe opportunities to allow students to grow in understanding and empathy for others. Inclusion is important, as is choice. Therefore, we have an opt-out procedure that empowers parents to make decisions about their own students' access to curriculum and supplemental materials. Just this morning, author Corey McCarthy, sponsored by the St. Paul Public Library's Read Brave initiative, was here talking to our students about their new book, Man o' War. Man o' War tells a nuanced and moving story of a transgender youth navigating high school, relationships, competitive swimming, and college. Corey's book has been banned from many library shelves and school districts across the country. As a library media specialist, we are committed to creating and nurturing library spaces where all students feel welcomed and can find books that reflect their identities. We are grateful to work in a school district that supports students' intellectual freedom, allowing them access to books that have been challenged or removed in other schools or classrooms across the country. Now it is my honor to introduce Governor Tim Walz.
Thanks, Sherry. Good afternoon, and Sherry, thank you for having a space. We're today, first and foremost, give our thanks to the library and media specialists, to our trained educators, and for many, you know, the issue around literacy and expanding that. One of the core principles of that is, and this is something that I was certainly trained in, is reading in the content area. I'm a geography teacher, but reading mattered so deeply in there. And I can remember many of my students, that geography class that hopefully let them get some spatial awareness, cultural awareness, but they talk about a book that we read in there, Cry Freedom, where they started to understand about South Africa. They understand what apartheid looks like. And part of why you were studying geography was to understand the people and the things that they went through. So really grateful. Grateful to stand here with these legislators who you're going to hear from, some of those in the Lieutenant Governor. And this issue around the trained professionals and the ability of the freedom to choose to read what you want to. My wife and I were talking about that. She, in her class, I brought my copy of 1984, and we were discussing the irony of this book in particular being banned from the idea of authoritarianism telling our students what they can and cannot read, of making sure that public education is such a force for good in this country. It has lifted up so many, and every single person I think you can go to can remember that time you picked up a book, whatever it was, a novel, whatever it was, that struck you. For me, it was a lot of those National Geographic, thinking about and dreaming about places that you could only imagine, seeing pictures of Machu Picchu or Mount Everest and thinking about what it would be like to go there, and reading the articles on what it meant, or picking up a book like The Hobbit and just being boggled by someone could create an entirely new world. And especially when you see, for young people, to see someone in a story who looks and sounds and is like you, and to understand that that's where the world's at, because it can seem small. You can seem like you're on your own, and those are times that are struggling. And to see this library put these books out, the idea of a book ban is basically the antithesis of everything we believe in education and in this country. And you're seeing it last year. Over 1,477 books were challenged and banned. And you see the names up here. And again, I encourage some of you to go look then and see why people are choosing to ban these, why they don't want to. We were just having a great discussion with some of the young people here. Look, not every book's good. And you don't have to like it. You can say, I don't really like this book. It kind of rubs me the wrong way or whatever. That's the beauty of this. Then don't read the damn thing. But don't tell me what I'm going to read, and don't tell others what they're going to read to be able to be exposed to it. That's the beauty of a free society, the idea that literature can open up windows that can be part of a huge education. And I think one of the things we're seeing in this country is the attempt to try and bully school boards, to bully librarians, to put people in a place that is challenging, and they should not. And I say this both as a teacher and as governor. I cannot stand bullies, and as governor, I'm going to make sure that book banning bullying stops in this state. And we've got our advocates here to help us with that, to make sure that these challenges that are being done, whether it's to local libraries or into schools, are not going to stand. Again, there are many options that you can use. If you choose and you don't want your child to read a book, I certainly encourage you as a parent to express to them, talk to them about that, and then not have them do that. But I'm not going to have this idea that someone's going to challenge and pull a book off the shelf just because they have an ideological difference to the content of that book that could have a profound positive impact on others in that classroom. So you're going to hear in a minute, you'll hear from the Lieutenant Governor, and then you'll hear from Senator Swedzinski, who's carrying the piece of legislation in the education bills that we're looking at, trying to make sure I grappling, you can probably have more articulate in this or whatever, the bans. So that's where we're going to ban these book bannings. We're going to make sure in Minnesota that we stand firm with this. I am proud to see Cuomo Park and so many others proudly displaying these books. And my God, I got to tell you, from a human nature and understanding kids or whatever, there were books in my classroom, they certainly weren't banned or whatever, but I wanted kids to read and I to get them excited, so I would just tell them, don't read these books, you're really not supposed to read these. Those were always gone. And so that's how I got them to read the books in many cases. So I think in today's world, don't underestimate kids, don't underestimate their ability to understand. Don't be paternalistic, as we heard, this idea that you don't know what's best for you. They're trying to understand that, and again, we have trained people who understand what is appropriate and what's put out there and how to talk to them. That's the best way to do this, not by banning. With that, I'll turn to Lieutenant Governor Flanagan.
It has been honestly a joy to watch him talk about being a teacher and connecting with young people, and how books are such a powerful tool to do that. I want to just name how this space feels. Because Sherry, this is a safe space. You can feel it and you can tell. When you walk into the door and these sort of beautiful lighting, the fireplace, the chairs, the images on the walls, and then the books on the shelves, I can't imagine what this would have been like for me as a student to walk into this space. To see these flags in this room, it tells students that you are wanted here, that you are needed here. And the same thing happens with the books that we put on our shelves and we encourage our young people to read. I was not immersed in literature that had characters who looked like me that I could relate to until I was in college. And then I was a sponge and I wanted to read everything. And when I actually got to meet Louise Erdrich, I almost passed out. One, because she's just like a big deal, but two, because she understands something that no other author that I had read understood. What it meant to be a Native woman in contemporary society. What a gift it is for our young people to see themselves reflected in literature. And I want to just lift up our student, our sophomore. I'm going to embarrass her, but that's what I do because I'm a cringy mom. Imani, thank you so much for sharing with us the books that you like to read. She shared with us a gigantic book that she read and started to read it when she was quite young, much younger, but talked about how important it is to have relevant stories that aren't made so that everything feels like it's just fine and hunky-dory, right? But stories that actually reflect the experiences and the struggles of young people. That's what our young people deserve. And when we value our students, they see themselves reflected in their education, they in turn value that education. It is a powerful, powerful tool. So the fact that folks are trying to take that away from our students, I just don't get it. When my kid is excited about a book, it is a win, right? And when we have opportunities to encourage our young people to read, and the other side of this issue, and we talk a lot and we hear a lot of rhetoric around freedom. What does that actually mean? Because I think we should have the freedom to make our own choices about our health care. We should have the freedom to make our own choices about how and when and if we start a family and who we marry and who we love, and certainly what we read. So I am so encouraged by these leaders, Senator Swedzinski and Representative Frasier. And Sherry, you have created a really incredible space for our young people, and I am grateful. I'm grateful for it. So Minnesota is going to remain, as long as we are in office, a place where freedom and decency thrive, where young people are valued and seen as a whole person, their whole selves. We're going to embrace them and continue to encourage them to pick up a book that they feel passionate about, because frankly, that means, that's what it means to be grounded in education and the importance of it. So thank you so much. Appreciate you for opening this space. And I'm going to turn it over to a good teacher, Senator Swedzinski.
Don't hold back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and it's going to get real.
Okay, warned you. Recently we had this hearing on Steve Swedzinski, privileged honored up here now. I taught him government American history for 33 years. Yeah, I beat him by about 20, I think, or something like that. The irony doesn't escape me that we recently had a hearing in the Senate on where a lot of school librarians and county librarians had to testify, and they were told ahead of time they had to limit their remarks to 2 to 3 minutes. They all went over, which the irony, like I said, didn't escape me. This is coming from people that they spent a career doing this. Shh. Anyway, so the Declaration of Independence, most famous passage, consists of the now ubiquitous phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This was Jefferson's definition of what rights governments are supposed to secure for its citizens. After he signed the Declaration of Independence at that wonderful event in Philadelphia, Ben Franklin walks out of Independence Hall, and a bunch of disgruntled farmers greet him out in the street, and they say to him, "How's this new government supposed to guarantee us our happiness?" And he looked at them and he said, "My friends, this new government's not going to guarantee you happiness. It's going to guarantee you the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. You, my friends, have to catch it." And that's what we do in libraries. We catch our happiness. And there's nothing more important to me as a government official to secure the rights found in the Declaration of Independence that in a subsidiary kind of a way trickle down into our libraries. Jefferson knew that merely life and liberty were not enough for our existence as a species. So he added pursuit of happiness. Happiness not in the marketplace of property and possessions, but happiness found in the marketplace of ideas, right up here. The happiness that can only be found in the wonderful books before us. So many of us, including many of our students, spend our lives looking for happiness elsewhere, hoping to find it around the next bend, or just over that hill, or under that rock. We forget that the best place for us to all find happiness is in our libraries, where no book should ever be banned. The pursuit of happiness is not about entertainment and enjoyment and euphoria. The pursuit of happiness is about enlightenment. Enlightenment. Enlightenment found in the marketplace of ideas. Enlightenment found in a free society. Enlightenment found in a library filled with ideas expressed through a multitude of ideas and views. I love asking people when I first meet them, what are you reading for pleasure? What are you reading for pleasure right now? I love it even more when they have an answer. While pursuing happiness, you enlighten and illuminate your mind through biography and fantasy and mystery. That's how we unlock our brain and discover our happiness. And when we are happy, we are self-actualized, which is the ultimate goal of all of us as humans. Self-actualization and our ability to leave this world a better place than we found it. That's why we're all here. We're all here for the same reason, to leave this world a little bit better than we found it. Whether it's literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, every single book has value, including banned books. Let's never limit our youth to the access to the wealth they seek. That's what banning books is trying to do, to limit our students' wealth. And we should be banning the ban, as the governor said. I'm really excited today because, as I was telling a few of you earlier, I finished a jigsaw puzzle in under an hour, and the side of the box said 6 to 8 years. So I'm really pumped about that. Because you see, not the meaning of life and the why we're all here isn't just to leave this world a little bit better than we found it. It's for all of us to solve as much of the puzzle as possible before we perish. To solve as much of the puzzle as possible before we perish. How can we have our students be part of solving that puzzle piece of their existence, or maybe even perhaps more than one puzzle piece, when we deny them the access of the information and ideas and dreams and visions found in our books? We can't do it. I love the masthead of the Washington Post. I hope every library on the planet Earth, or certainly in the United States, or certainly in Minnesota, puts the banner of the Washington Post above the door. Democracy dies in darkness. Democracy dies in darkness. We must all do our part as legislators, as librarians, and as citizens to do our part, that intellectual opportunity and intellectual freedom for our youth never dies. And our job as the adults in this room are to keep those flames alive in our youth. So let's make sure we ban the ban. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ann Castee, the chair-elect of the Intellectual Freedom Committee of the Minnesota Library Association, and I'll try to follow this. Today we're discussing a pivotal moment for intellectual freedom and access to information in our state, and a bold statement on the importance of free expression and the freedom to read in our communities. The MLA would like to express its enthusiastic support for this effort to protect intellectual freedom in Minnesota. The core of the legislation is clear. It asserts that the policy of the state of Minnesota to protect and encourage the autonomy of our publicly funded libraries in acquiring materials selected for their scholarship, literary value, reflection of diverse viewpoints, and ability to spark joy and interest in reading. Through books, Minnesotans make connections to people and places they may not meet in their everyday lives. Libraries must be able to continue to provide materials that depict the intricate tapestry of our world. In these times when mental health is in crisis and the Surgeon General is stating that loneliness is an epidemic, information and stories that represent all types of life experiences are at the forefront of promoting knowledge and empathy. It's essential that library collections continue to serve as beacons of knowledge, acceptance, and understanding. Through this proposed legislation, libraries will be formally protected from censorship, reflecting our belief that access to a diversity of viewpoints and information is a cornerstone of education and democracy. We urge our state legislature to demonstrate their foresight by passing the significant legislation, a commitment to the intellectual growth and freedom of our communities. The Minnesota Library Association is dedicated to collaborating with educators and legislators and library professionals to realize the full potential of these policies, and together will pave the way for a future where the freedom to explore, learn, and think critically is guaranteed for all Minnesotans, irrespective of their age or background. Thanks.
Amen. Cedric, anything to add?
Thank you, Governor. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Cedric Frasier, the areas that I cover, District 43A, which is the cities of New Hope and Crystal, and I'm the House author of the bill to ban the ban of books. And, you know, I won't be long, but what I'll say is, when you think about why there would be this movement to ban books, you have to understand that if you can have a citizenry that is not educated, they are less likely to challenge, they're less likely to be vocal about things, they're more likely to be followers and to be led into places that they shouldn't be led into. I wear this pendant here of a guy named El-Haj Malik Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X, one of the most well-educated and well-read people. Not a formal education, but books. He read every book he could get his hand on. So he knew about issues around the world, and he could have conversations with world leaders, though he didn't have that formal education. He was charismatic, he was engaging, he brought people in, he was very influential. And he always credited everything he had to what he had been educated on, the access that he had to education. He wanted everyone to have a free mind, to be critical thinkers. I've got 3 daughters, and my goal as a parent is to make sure they're critical thinkers, make sure they can take care of themselves, make sure they can think for themselves, make sure they can challenge when they need to challenge. That is how we prepare our kids and our youth for the world. So anytime I see a movement that is about shedding off the very thing, the very ideals that can allow for our kids to be those critical thinkers, for our kids to be the next, not only state and regional and national leaders, but world leaders. I got a problem with that. And we're going to do something about that. That's what these bills are for here, to make sure that our kids in Minnesota will have the opportunity to be the next world leaders. And we're going to continue to make sure we push for that. Thank you.
Yay. The Most Secret Memory of Men by Mohammed Sar. That's on my bedstand right now. I'm not reading it in the original French, though. I'm sorry. I'm cheating. So I'm cheating. Well, look, you hear what it is, what we're here for. This is a fight and a hill that we are going to hold. I want to give a thanks to all those librarians, media specialists. And I want to give a special thank you. We've got students who've joined us today who took their time to form groups to push back against these bans and went and testified in their time at their school boards, telling them why they wanted to read books. That's what leadership looks like. That is exactly what the representative's talking about. I wish they didn't have to do that, but there's also something very powerful to be said. That's where they're at. So this piece of legislation will ensure that we don't have these bullying, we don't see folks overrun, that the state of Minnesota steps up and protects, as the Lieutenant Governor said, the freedoms. And again, I make the case to people, I've been making this time and time again, that people want to talk about, you know, small towns and how they work. I get a kick out of it. There was a popular song, apparently, was somewhat controversial, about a guy tried that in a small town. That dude grew up in a town of 150,000. That's not a small town. Small towns work because people mind their own damn business about things. And this is really one about the freedom. Stay out of the business of this. If you want to talk to your kids, do that. You have options of what you can do. You have options where you can school your children if that's what you want to. I trust the professionals in this. I trust the ability of the public schools have been the single biggest engine of change and opportunity of any place on the planet. And American public schools are a place that need to remain exactly that. So we're glad to answer some questions.
I know there's been like attempts, and this has come up, but are there examples of books being banned in Minnesota schools or libraries that have been concerning to you? Like, because I know, there's hearings or requests come in, but has it actually happened?
There are a variety of types of challenges that occur. They can be at the policy level, they can be at the specific book level. There's probably too many to detail as far as where they're at in the different stages. There is a concerted effort, a national effort that goes on that many groups in our state have been informed by, to go to school board meetings with a certain list of books and address the specific passages in those books aloud, and try to work the system that way. But librarians also have our systems in place to push back against this. So it's at various stages. I know that's not a direct answer to the question, but yeah, we hear about quite a bit.
Yeah.
On the elementary school level, they were all books with trans characters and protagonists, and then at the high school level, anything detailing sexual assault, or you have a couple books about, different races and cultures across the world being shown.
I have the list. There's 28 of them in Bloomington.
Right, in Bloomington, it's happening. I get a kick out of this. I saw this. I was mentioning some books that have been banned, and I saw one of these groups push back and said, well, that book's not being made. Oh, I'm sorry, we had the title wrong. It's Animal Farm, whichever one has a talking animal in it or whatever. Look, it is clear that there is an effort to try and do this. There's an effort that has spun up, especially aimed at schools, and I think you just heard it here. There's an effort to demonize and marginalize our transgender and our LGBTQ students, people that were at a time when they need to find their identity more than ever. So this is interesting when you ask folks who will come to these meetings and ask about it. There's always a reason why this isn't such a bad thing to do. This is one of those issues that is the most slippery of slippery slopes if we start to go down.
Has any school district been successful in their attempt to ban a
We've
book?
taken books off the shelves, is that correct, some of you? They weren't able to do it.
Well, in Bloomington, so they challenged 28, and only 4 of them have completed the challenge process, because in a lot of these places, committees have to be formed to review each book, and they have to read each book, even high school books. So it's a lengthy process. So I can't say for sure if some have been completed in other districts, but in Bloomington, I know only 4 have finished going through the process.
And they were taken off the shelves? Or
No,
they were not?
They were reinstated, yeah. But those were elementary books.
Yeah.
Are there any examples of books that shouldn't be on school library shelves?
Well, I think I've listened to the experts in this.
I mean, are there any examples of books that we should ban?
I think we should always consider the state.
Come to the mic, yeah.
I think it's important to adhere to district policy when you select books. I think it's always important to consider age and audience when you select books. At a high school level, I think if students have information they want to learn and garner from reading books, they should be allowed to.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on that, or?
Well, again, no, go ahead.
I just have another question, but were you going to address that or something?
No, go ahead.
So you mentioned, Governor, kind of parents can still decide with their kids. I know, so under the law, there's a subdivision. Nothing in this section impairs or limits the rights of parents, guardians, or adults to request a content challenge under the section. But I know, isn't St. Louis Park also asking, I don't know, well, maybe Lieutenant Governor, you're from St. Louis Park, I don't know if you want to weigh in, like, there was an issue in St. Louis Park with some parents wanting their kids to not be engaged, I think, in LGBTQ related books, and then, but I thought St. Louis Park was going to ask the legislature to say that there can't be learning exceptions for protected classes topics.
So I can't speak to the specific legislation. I do know that they have brought this forward and believe that the legislature can do more there. The current policy or law is that students can opt out and families can opt them out. I think one of the reasons why our family has chosen St. Louis Park Public Schools is because they have the stated values of the district is that they are welcoming and affirming and value diversity of all kinds. And so, I think that opt-out is something that needs to be available for families. And I think that students from every background are going to come in contact with folks from all different walks of life and should be able to have the experience and materials to be able to engage and become, citizens with a really strong worldview. I'm actually not sure what that legislation is at, but I know it's been a hot topic in our community because it seems a bit disconnected with who we say we are.
So if that's moving forward, it's moving on a separate track. That's not in this bill.
No. Nope.
Do other states have a ban on a book ban similar to this one?
Pardon me?
Do other states have a ban on a
That's a
ban
good
similar
question.
to this one?
Yeah, let me check.
Yeah.
There are other states that have addressed, that have a ban on book bans. Illinois is the one that comes to mind. That's recently, I grew up there, so I track quite a bit, a lot of families still there. There are other states that are focusing on taking a look at this, and what they're doing is they're saying that it's appropriate to look at books and the appropriateness of those books, but it's important to have those that are professionals to make that evaluation, not at the whims of some movement that's specifically looking to only target certain books, certain protected class, certain particular lived backgrounds, or particular political ideology. And just to be clear, that is what we're trying to protect here, that we're not targeting certain groups to ensure that those groups don't get to see themselves, but other groups get to see themselves in these books. In the state, we do have an issue with literacy. It often falls along lines of racial backgrounds and poverty, growing up in socioeconomic status. And what we're trying to do is to ensure that those students that fall within those situations, one of the things that will prompt you and make you enjoy reading is when you can see yourself within that book. And so if we take that opportunity away, we are actually taking away a tool that can encourage our kids to be better at reading and to engage in something that's going to be a lifelong thing to benefit them.
Cedric, is there an enforcement mechanism for this legislation, or what happens with subsequent legislatures or administrations?
Yeah, so in the bill that I'm working through in the House side, and we're still negotiating the language, but in the current language, there is an accountability mechanism that requires that the Bill of Rights, Library Bill of Rights, is adopted, and if that is not adopted, and if a policy is not adopted that's consistent with the legislation, funding can be impacted by that. So we do have some mechanisms there to work on accountability.
That's good. Can I just say, and all of us to acknowledge, those who have asked for book bans have never been on the right side of history. They have never been viewed as being the folks that were the heroes of freedom. They have never been viewed as the people that were looking out for others in this. So I appreciate the intellectual discussion around this or whatever, but I think at some point in time, let's go back up to 40,000 feet. Trying to tell someone else's children that they can't read The Hobbit or whatever it might be, you're in the wrong. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm pretty willing to go across lines on things. This is one I'm not willing really to go across lines. You're wrong on this. This is not the right place to be. We have those protections in place. We have the safeguards. It's worked for so long. We've got a whole lot of people that got spun up post-COVID and decided this was going to be their issue, and they're starting to make it. And it is having a negative impact on our kids. But I'll tell you what, they have inspired and they've lit a fire. And be careful what you do. You've lit a fire on folks who understand what freedom looks like, and now you've got a whole bunch of young leaders across this state saying, nope, nothing going to happen. So I don't know. It's pretty hard to get riled up to throw books in a fire. I think you're in the wrong team when you're playing that way. So grateful to this team. We're glad you're all here. So appreciate it. Sure.
So, Governor, in the last 24 hours, a bipartisan majority of Minnesota's congressional delegation has made statements asking that you reassign the murder case against State Trooper Ryan Londegren. You've also expressed concerns about Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty's handling of the case. Has your position evolved at all? Are you still weighing whether to intervene in that case?
Yeah, we're still looking. This is serious, and I think I've made clear where I stand on this. I'll have to say, probably the least effective group of people and most partisan folks are in the United States Congress right now to add in and weigh in on something. I think there's concerns, there's nuances in this to make sure that we're following the law, but no, my position hasn't changed. I am concerned about this. I am concerned that justice be carried out fairly for everyone, and we'll continue to take a look at it. I know that there is a hearing happening today around this case, around disclosure of the expert witness, and those things will continue to weigh.
And related, as of this time, the Attorney General has not requested that you...
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a timeline?
I think we just, as the courts start to look at this, there's this, and I think the omnibus hearing is on the 26th of April. There's some things happening. I think there's more data coming out all along, and I have expressed it weeks ago, long before a letter was sent. The tool of choice by Congress, the sternly worded letter, that piece of it, we'll just continue to see what comes out on this. I think it's really important to take this holistically, to understand where Minnesotans are at and thinking about it, and not a timeline on it, but every day we're looking.
Wait, you sent a letter, a sternly worded letter, or you're referring to the letter?
No, they sent a sternly worded letter, which I would mention for some of those folks who sent that letter. I didn't hear a peep out of them on from election denial and what happened on January 6th and the assault on law enforcement. That letter was worded around law enforcement or whatever. I'd ask them to stay consistent on their support of law enforcement, not when it chooses to be politically expedient for them.
Governor, the county attorney has said that she's willing to discuss this issue with you. Have you heard from the county attorney's office here? And do you have confidence in Mary Moriarty's office?
No, I've not heard from them, and I will stick to my previous statement. I've had serious disagreements on multiple issues, but I have not heard from them on this.
Somewhat on topic.
Sure.
The news of Minneapolis' latest shortfall, Minneapolis School, there's at least one city council member saying he thinks the state should step in, and help out Minneapolis with its deficit. Can you kind of respond to that?
Well, look, education of our children is a state and local partnership to get this right. I will note that $5.5 billion that we put in the legislature last year was the single biggest investment in education in state history. Each individual district has its own challenges. We certainly are willing to work together to try and find working solutions, because my point has been, if we're truly one Minnesota, it does not matter where you go to school. If you're going to school in Duluth or Worthington or Cuomo Park, you should have access to quality facilities like this. You should have access to the right instructors that are there, and the access to make sure that you get that education. And we look at each individual district separately on this. I would say at this time we'll continue to work with them. We are partners in this, and we have made the case that the state should be a major partner.
Just real quick regarding Uber Lyft. This morning, the Minneapolis City Council, a majority of them would be to make any potential changes by April 25th, days before Uber and Lyft have vowed to leave. Do you have any hope that the companies can be persuaded to stay?
Well, this is a good first step. It is the point that I said, I think coming back, let's find a compromise on this. It is absolutely clear here that the workers, and I think our state study, which by the way is the most extensive in the country, around this issue of ride share, certainly shows that there needs to be improvement in wages and working conditions around these drivers. But we also know that it shows that the proposal that was put forward by Minneapolis has led to this decision. I've said time and time again, rolling the dice and saying I don't think they'll leave or something magically will appear afterwards is not the right solution. So I think this is a good place. I would encourage folks to get the council back to the table. I don't know what their procedures are for voting, vetoing, not overriding, now saying we maybe should have override and now maybe we should fix this. My hope would be that that procedure would let them move a little bit faster. Things don't just move on a dime. We already know that the service center for Uber is going to be closing on April 11th, I believe. That will start to shut things down and it's hard to come back up again. This issue warrants, in my opinion, come back, reconsider this. Let's work together. Let's find a working compromise that folks will be there. That means coming to the table, and I don't want to rain on this parade because this is progress in the right direction. But in answer to your question, I am still deeply concerned and somewhat skeptical that they'll get there.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you.
Great job. Appreciate it.
I did your read post.
Oh, you know, and I did, I don't. Most Americans see the southern border like they look at their front door of their home. Most Americans lock their front door at night. They don't lock their front door at night because they hate absolutely everybody on the outside. Most Americans lock their front door at night because